All right. I think we are live. I always like to check just to be sure. I think we are. Yes, sir. Okay. Welcome, everybody, to the debut of Industry of Impact. This is a LinkedIn series that we are doing to really just shine a light on people who are making a positive impact on other people, on companies, on communities, you name it. We just think that, uh, you know, there can be more of that in the world. It's happening. Why not highlight people that are doing it? So my name is Mark Berger, and I am the VP of Marketing for AMI. And I'm joined today by the CEO of AMI, Julian Meir,
Hey,
and
everyone.
our guest today, Matt Rogers, who is a career coach. And I'm excited to have you both here. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome, Julian. Welcome, Matt.
Afternoon.
Hey,
How are
Matt.
you guys? How are you guys?
Very
Doing
good. Thanks.
Good.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right. I have to open with this. The two of you have really three things in common, and I find it very interesting that you do. You're both in New York, and I think you've both been in New York for quite a long time, if not all your lives. You both were competitive athletes, and you both are now in the corporate world and in the entrepreneur life. So that being said, my first question is Yankees or Mets?
Oh, man, you're putting us on the spot from the
Yeah.
start. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go first. Family by birth, Mets fan. Just where my family was from. So
Okay.
that's definitely
Okay.
that's
I
an
like that
easy,
answer.
that's an easy one. It's not an enjoyable answer, but
This year it kind of is.
looks great. Yeah, no, it does. It does.
So we have a fourth thing in common. So my mom's mom, my grandmother, she was a big baseball fan, and she grew up on Long Island and was also a big Mets fan. So I was raised on the Mets as well. Although I'm more of a hockey guy because I grew up playing hockey, so I'm more of a Rangers fan than anything. But also born into a Mets family.
All right. Well, then you guys get a little bit of a pass from me because I'm an Astros fan. So you're not going to get any really ribbing from me right now because we don't have to talk about the guys on the other side of town. Okay. Okay. Hey, so Matt, maybe we could just start with you could introduce yourself. Oh, did drop? Oh, there we go. You could introduce yourself. Tell us what you do for a living and kind of where you're headed.
Absolutely. So, like you mentioned, Mark, I have a long background in sports. I worked directly in the sports world for about 20 years, and this is continuing the time I went through school. I was, coaching during the time I was finishing up my career as an athlete. So, really got into coaching during, the second half of my college. I would say got involved with a number of USA swimming club teams, coached some high school, coached adults and masters, triathlon, as well as having a small business for a number of years, doing strength conditioning, mostly with athletes, but also general fitness clients for over 10 years. Made a transition to the corporate world as a financial services recruiter a number of years ago. So that was a major transition for me, and have, related to career coaching, speaking, seminars, volunteer work, alumni mentoring with colleges, have really built up a nice network on the career coaching side of what I do. A lot of it is volunteer, but it gets me in front of the networks that I want to help. And networking is a key factor. It's a huge buzzword nowadays, and I think a lot of people don't really understand how or when or why to do it for the right reasons. But if you're out there in the communities helping individuals who you want to be helping, it's all going to come full circle, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity, for you and your needs. So those are, pretty much what I'm working on now. I still work part-time as a lifeguard at Jones Beach, my 22nd summer. My wife did that for 10 years before having kids. So we have over, we got over 30 years on the beach there too.
Wow.
So that's a little bit of our background. My wife was a college athlete as well, played rugby, three-sport high school athlete. So it's coming down the pipe for my kids. They're doing t-ball. So I came out of coaching retirement last spring to coach 4 and 5-year-old t-ball, and I now have 2 years experience doing that, which is actually it's a lot of fun. So
Yeah,
that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I commend you for coaching t-ball as much as anything like that. That's got to be quite the challenge, I'm sure.
It also sounds like
great. I look forward to it. I don't know. It's great. It's great.
Also sounds like between you and your wife's athletic abilities that you have some superhuman athletic children.
Yeah, they're fast runners. We'll figure out what they want to do. Don't want to push the kids in one direction or the other to do what we did. So they're figuring out what they want to do. But we got them in a million different sports, which I think is the best thing for the little guys and girls.
Yes, I completely agree. Now it's funny because so swimming and lifeguard. Julian, you were the winter sport guy, right? What did you were a snowboarder mostly?
Yes, I grew up playing travel hockey, went on to play AAA travel hockey, and then I was always really into skiing and snowboarding. And then when I was 12, went to Vermont on a trip, and I called my parents and I said, I want to snowboard. And they said, what are you talking about? You are snowboarding. And I said, nope, that's all I want to do. I just want to snowboard. And my mom, being the woman that she is and always being supportive, reached into her bag of tricks and started calling some mountain schools up there and got in touch with the coaches at Killington Mountain School. And the next thing you know, that's where I was. So I was at the Killington Mountain School on the snowboard club there, started competing, and then throughout the years moved up that to a national and then international level, competing out in Colorado and all over the world, and was on a team called ISTC, the International Snowboard Training Center, which was an Olympic and Olympic development team, but it was multinational. So a lot less politics than the standard national teams for any one country, but really fun team.
Excellent.
So
to much of your mom's chagrin, you picked one of the only more expensive sports than hockey.
Yeah, seriously. And also, my mom was never into extreme sports, and she blames me for most of the gray hair that she has. So yeah.
Well, and didn't you injure yourself bad, Julian? Like that came to fruition, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I broke my back when I was 21, competing in Mount Hood in Oregon. I won't go into the story because it's a bit long-winded, but this is actually a question, Matt, that I kind of have for you, is because up until I was 21, all I did was focus on my athletics, and I never really thought about a career path because I was pretty set on, taking my border cross racing to an Olympic level and really pushing that. So it was very difficult for me to transition from, full-time athletics training, just being in that environment, to thinking about a career in any type of corporate environment, sitting behind a desk, because I was just used to being active constantly. Is that something that you've kind of seen in your world, that, athletes from whether it's high school, college, have some difficulties transitioning?
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I mean, it's a major topic. I think that it's always been there, but surely with the competitiveness of college sports only growing, especially in the middle, especially in the middle levels. So the competitiveness to even get on one of those teams in school has gone up, even at what you would consider, a middle level school. So that it's definitely, I don't want to say gotten worse over the past 20 years, but yeah, it's absolutely something that is sort of like a cliff you get to the end of the cliff, and which way do you go? A lot of schools are doing, I have to say, a much better job in recent years of dealing with that issue.
Mhm.
However, it's still definitely a major issue that we're seeing for sure.
And what are some of the things that you kind of have seen, and how do you help people through that in your career coaching?
Yeah, part of the issue is if they have the ability to get a summer internship. I know that's very difficult to do with athletes, not necessarily to get the internship or apply or anything like that. Never mind that part being difficult.
Mhm.
The ability to do that, even if it's just a summer program, is challenging. If you're in a spring sport, or you're in a fall sport for that matter too, whether it's on the front end or the back end of the summer, that kind of conflicts there. Most companies are pretty good about that because they want to have that quality talent in front of them, and
Right.
athletes are definitely one of the categories that would fit into there that they're looking for. But definitely some issues facing them there. But I find if people get into an internship role, that's probably the number one simplest answer to help them prepare
Mhm.
for that last and final year, so to say. So that's a good factor right there. Number two is considering the options early enough. Most people don't start considering this if they don't get into an internship, maybe late junior year or early
Mhm.
senior year when they start to think about that. And they probably could have been having more conversations about that, in the earlier years. So sort of the rush to the finish, I think, is an issue.
Yeah.
And, taking it's also major and school based. So what are you studying? What is the academic background moving you towards? Are there jobs currently in that industry? What are they? Where can you find them? And how do you execute on that? So I think the execution and the research part is really the only part that's missing. I think they're given plenty of services. The amount of services that college athletes get now is unbelievable. Everything from laundry to homework and testing prep. It's really, their handlers do a good job during that period, but that makes it even more difficult when they get out, because they're used to all that structure and that support. And, there are some difficulties there. I don't know if this is a big point, but it seems like, and maybe it's just the nature of the sports, it seems like the individual sports, although you're on a team, you're always on a team. But there are sports like tennis and swimming or snowboarding where you're out there when it's the game time is nobody. Even something like tennis, they're not. No one's allowed to coach you during the game in tennis. It's illegal.
Right.
They'll get thrown out of the match if your coach tries to coach you. Or something like swimming, you're underwater, or skiing or snowboarding. They're
Yep.
nowhere near you. They're hundreds of yards away, or thousands of yards away. So it might just be anecdotal, but I think that maybe just the mentality there, of a more individual, person.
Mhm.
Maybe they're doing a better job. So it could be a personality thing as well. But I think definitely the business schools do a little bit of better job of preparing them for specific jobs and roles, whereas more of a liberal arts education, or more, some of those areas, they're not really targeting a specific area, which I think is very difficult
Mhm.
as well. So if you're in a science or a liberal arts background, the pathway there is really not as clear. Whereas, if you major in accounting, or finance, there's the pathway is not necessarily easier, but it's much more clear cut. So I
Yeah.
think those are some of the difficulties there. If you're not in it, like I use the example of accounting because it's very simple. I studied accounting. I'll probably become an accountant. So if your major isn't a job, you have a lot more work to do
Mhm.
on your end to kind of figure that out, because the pathway isn't near.
Oops,
Yep.
the camera turned.
Oh, did we lose Matt?
I'm not sure. It looks like it went sideways, like maybe his phone fell. I can't tell. Oh, wait. I think he's trying to come back.
He was practicing some of his athletic maneuvers.
Right. It's funny because when he gets back, I want to dive in. Sorry, that's a swimming pun. To kind of higher ability. I'm very interested in what that might. There you are. Can you hear us, Matt? All right.
Can you hear us again, Matt?
There we go. Just you're muted still, I think now. And we can't hear you. We can't hear you. Okay. He's going to come back out and come back in again. Yeah. One of the things I want to ask him is, when you're talking to someone who's getting ready to start a new career or their career,
Yep.
like higher ability, right? You can have the accounting degree.
Mm-hmm.
You can be someone who's focused on, supply chain and logistics. But I'm curious, what if there are discussions when he talks to people about higher ability and the intangibles that go along with it. Athletes inherently are going to have some of that going on. Let's see, add it back in. There we go.
How are we now?
Awesome. Good. I was just
post 2020 issues.
You're right. I was just saying what I was going to ask you about coming back in. I'm curious about higher ability. So someone tactically could have a path and all of the things that they do, right? They've got an accounting degree, they're going into accounting. They have an internship and they follow through with that, get hired or done, whatever it is. But I'm curious if you ever have discussions with people around higher ability, around the intangibles that, companies are looking for. From what I see, you want all of the puzzle pieces to fit, but you want the person to fit.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if you come across that in discussions maybe you've had, or what you give advice on in that area.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So, whatever, obviously I know about the positions that I work with and the areas I'm in for, for myself the most, but surely for any type of role, I think that the intangible that most people need to think about going in is, okay, you're interviewing for this position, you have it on paper, you're prepared for the interview, some of the basic questions you're probably going to have to answer, but can you make, and this is very difficult to do, but can you make this person feel, so I'm talking about as myself as the interview, can I as the candidate make them feel that if they were out and they had to send somebody to represent them to some meeting or some important.
Oh. Flipped again.
It flipped again. Can you hear us, Matt? Because we lost your audio. Yeah, we lost your audio again.
He was getting into the good stuff there.
I know.
This is actually a super interesting point. because I had a very good friend who was really, really bright, like perfect SAT scores, straight A's at a Ivy League school in finance and language, and really struggled a lot, even though he was set up on some interviews, kind of with those intangibles, the soft skills, the interpersonal skills.
Yep.
And a lot of my friends, I would say that I see in, who've gone through school, it's not something, unless you take, public speaking and some of those things much more seriously, and you really study the interpersonal connection, that a lot of people think about. They really train hard skills, but there's definitely, I think it's a really, really important point that you bring up there, Mark.
Yeah, the people skills. I mean, I feel fortunate that I am hyper aware of that, because my son's in college, and I keep talking about it, right? I keep feeding him that, because his classes don't talk about it, right? They're not going over that stuff.
Yeah.
You back, Matt?
Yes. Sorry, for some reason I keep losing the audio here.
That's
okay. I think I heard the tail end of what you were just saying, about how, in the colleges do a great job of covering the material, but they may not do as good of a job of transferring that into specific skills related to a specific job. So I think before I got cut off there, I was kind of speaking about how do we get prepared a little bit earlier. So having those networking conversations, before your junior year, moving towards the positions you want to get involved with. We were talking about sort of that cliff that student athletes specifically come to after having all this support structure and services, then having none of that moving forward. That all kind of ties together with getting ready for everything early.
Yep.
And I was going into kind of how a lot of my friends, some really, really bright, men and women, have sometimes struggled with the soft skills over the hard skills. So the interpersonal side of things, how to listen, how to be a really good active listener, how to, make that real connection so people feel comfortable around you. Is that something that you kind of, help people with as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in the areas that I work with, mainly for hiring, recruiting, interviewing, they are front office style, face-to-face client interaction types of roles mostly. So that's a critical factor. You can take someone who's extremely talented, analytical skills, computer skills, whatever they might be required for that particular industry or job or role. But how can they, like I was saying before, what I was getting to is when you're interviewing, you're interviewing for, can you be replaced? Can you replace? So when you're being interviewed, it's saying, can these people trust you to not only have the backgrounds, but what if somebody is out? What if that next level superior is out? Can you be the person to step in for them? Would they feel comfortable sending this person, solo somewhere to act as, the representative for your company should someone step away or be on vacation or what have you? So that's kind of an intangible that I think people don't think about is, you have a half hour or something on an interview, you need to make them confident enough that, you could step in for them or you could step in for somebody else. And that's definitely more presentation, attitude, related than, okay, I had a 4.0, and I know how to use these various computer systems, which obviously are a factor. But again, if you don't make someone feel confident, when you're speaking with them, somebody else probably will, in that, that they're going to interview tomorrow or later that day. So that really takes you down, down the list.
But it's an interesting thing, though, because I don't know that the interviewer is always connected to the soft skills. So sometimes they may only be looking at at what you can do and how you can do it, and they think they're comparing apples to apples, and it's a huge challenge. I've personally run into that myself, where you can be as engaging and confident and happy as and really come across well. But if that person on the other side is not quite in that space, then maybe it's just not a right fit,
Yeah.
or they just might learn a lesson later on that, well, maybe you need both. You need someone who
Yeah,
can.
absolutely. No, definitely, absolutely. Sort of those sort of come into play, I'd say, earlier on. So they're doing the best that they can to not even speak with people that might have those paper, everything that could be on paper. But when you get down to it, when there's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, people left in that, and whatever that process is of interviewing,
Yeah.
a lot of the times the deal breaker, will be something that might not be as technical. Now, if we're talking somewhere, so my brother he's in the technology world, so I'm no computer genius, so that would be more of a technical role where those might be a little less important.
Right.
But generally, when we're talking about like the the decision comes down to it, they've generally weeded out the people as far as what's on paper. I would say, obviously everything's different. So you have, and you have the most room for improvement with the other soft skills and your presentation skills. You can practice that, over and over again. So one of the things I worked with, this is a good example. So I worked with a number of years ago, a scholarship organization, and we volunteered our time, and we went out to these college students who were, who were part of this scholarship foundation that gave all of these kids, an opportunity to go to schools that were, 60, 70, $80,000 a year that they would not have had the means to do already. Excellent program. But basically we were giving them interview tips and talking about recruiting and, interviews and things like that. And the thing I said to them, and I'd never come up with it before, I came up with it right on the spot.
Mhm.
But I said, when you go on these interviews, I go, nobody really knows who you are. So you have however much time you have, to make them think about who you want to be. So that's a good kind of confidence builder to tell someone if they have like interviews coming up is, remember, this person has never met you. All they've done is looked at 25 lines of text on a piece of paper about you, so you can walk in there and be like whoever you want to. And that's really what what it comes down to, because if you don't come across as confident, it puts people off almost naturally. So just giving people that that pep talk, I think, is really effective.
Now let's enter our social media tip of the day, because they may not have only looked at your resume, they may have looked at all your social media. So so
Yeah.
that could be a reflection as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
one of the another question is, like, if you see, like, obviously a D1 athlete in college, they have a really rigorous training regimen, obviously diet, and then obviously mentality are all super important pieces to being a successful athlete in general. And do you see those kind of skills transition from the athletics into the career side? Like, do you see these athletes carrying that forward and, creating that structured kind of training so they're really prepared, the practice schedule for the corporate end as well?
Yeah, I mean that would be the general mentality of why they're such coveted candidates for a number of different industries, a number of different spaces, for sure. It's it's sort of like even just hiring, knowing that someone had a college degree. It was okay. They agreed to commit to something for a period of time. They got in there, and they got it done. So to me, that's more of a factor of someone's personal abilities rather than what they studied, what their grades were. It doesn't mean that someone without a degree couldn't have done just as good of a job as someone who didn't, but it just shows that commitment level. And it's probably the same thing with athletes, going through school. They had additional responsibilities that they had to take care of. There's obviously a mental toughness aspect to it, overcoming ups and downs. So I'd say it's not really skill based. It's just kind of being used to some of the ups and downs and wins and losses that happen in, in a business type setting. So just being able to adjust to that, I think, is something that if you were not in an environment like that previously, it's just something that you haven't been tested on. So it's just another level of testing and responsibility and, commitment, that you're fishing in a pool, that no one else may have been tested in that regard yet. Doesn't mean that when and where they are tested, that they're not going to overcome those challenges already. But it's sort of a probability. You're putting yourself in the best probability to win that bet, so to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to keep us too much longer here, but how about we go with like top 3 tips you're going to give, that college athlete or anyone coming out of college or starting their career? What would be your top three pieces of advice?
Absolutely. So, number one, we already spoke about, get involved early with things like networking. Find out what different positions, different industries, find out what it's really like to be there as much as you can, so that you have information. You may even find some areas that you never knew even existed. That's something that's extremely important. So, and the earlier that you do that, start that in your second year of school, settle in. Once you get used to it in your freshman year, now you have the ability to go out there and try to start to think about some things like this, do some, some networking phone calls, ask some people who you may know what their position is like on a day-to-day basis. So you have a little bit more information going in. That's number one. Number two is make sure that you aren't getting pushed towards something, for outside reasons. So we see a lot of athletes going into things like, finance, sales. There's no reason that can't be a successful route for someone. But don't sort of typecast yourself into those areas if you don't think you would be successful there. Everyone's an individual. And again, that kind of goes back to point number one, is start to figure that stuff out early. Yeah. And number two is, I think it's really overlooked. It is a factor that you should try to do something that you think you would enjoy, that you have an interest in, genuine passion for. We hear this a lot, but to me, it's extremely overemphasized. And what's underemphasized is that if you don't excel at this, if you're not in the top 25, 20% of individuals in that environment, eventually it doesn't matter what it is. You may not enjoy it for very long. So make sure that you're in something that you can excel at. And again, this is tying back to point number one. If you don't know what it takes to excel, or you don't know the day-to-day or what an actual position or career is all about, right. Studying it in a book is not going to find out. You're never going to find out those intangibles. So try to discover if you would excel at something. I think the major frustration for a lot of people is not that they don't necessarily enjoy their work. It's that they're not successful enough. It might not line up with their strengths. So it's not that they're just not good at it or they're lazy, but it's not lining up with their absolute strengths for them to be successful. And I think that's completely overlooked. You don't hear anybody who's out there in career training or, all these quote unquote gurus who are online and on the social media platforms talking about that. All they talk about is, what do you care about? What are you passionate about? Which, yes, is important, but, I'm not going to the NBA. You know what I mean? But I really like basketball. I'm a basketball fan, love to play, basketball, shoot around with my family and stuff, but I'm not going to the NBA. Doesn't matter how much I care about it. Right. So if you're not going to excel at something, and you can always get better, you can always improve, but you have to align your strengths and your personality and, your character with what you're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, that's a really good point, honestly, because I'll never forget. I was with a guy that I know. He runs a very successful real estate business, and he was like, my job is this simple. I figured out what I'm good at, and he drew like a target, a little circle, bigger circle, and then a bigger circle. He's like, I spend 90% of my time in here, and then about 10% of my time in here, and I make sure basically to never spend any of my time out here. And you're totally right. That's hitting the nail on the head. Like, I think the world as a whole tells people that they have to have it figured out, but they really don't give people the opportunity to explore and really reflect on what they enjoy, but also really what they're good at and how to match those two together. So it's an excellent point you make there.
Amazing. Okay. All right. Last question. And because you're like an authentic New Yorker, I'm not going to ask you about pineapple on pizza. I'm not going to do it because I know what you're going to say. So I'm going to ask you, what's your favorite place you've ever traveled to?
Favorite place I ever traveled to? I went on my honeymoon to the Atlantis in Bahamas. That was pretty excellent.
Oh yeah,
nice.
So I'd probably say that. I've only been there once, so I'm gonna say that. That's my one for
Love
sure.
it. I've been there too. I did not go down the giant slide though.
Oh, me and my wife did that all day. We were like children.
Awesome. Well, Matt, thank you so much for your time. You know what? Keep impacting those kids. Feeding the pipeline, right? So you're growing careers. So love it. Thank you for your time. Next week, we're doing this again. Same time, same day, next Thursday. We're going to have on Erica Rankin. She is the CEO of Bro Dough, which is a cookie dough company in Canada. And she is very active on social media and an entrepreneur. So we're looking forward to talking to her as well. But Matt, thank you so much for your time. Best of luck, and we look forward to following you, my man.
Matt,
Yeah, great.
so much.
Absolutely.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Take care.